The last ship in the human fleet was on fire, and it was accelerating. Sevrok pressed his secondary manipulators against the viewport and watched it come. The ESS Tenacity. A designation he had pulled from RT combat records 40 seconds ago, during the first exchange of fire, when the human vessel had still been one of 12. It was the only one left. Its port hull was open to vacuum. Its drive signature was ragged and wrong, burning unevenly, the kind of burn that meant something structural had given way and the engineers were compensating by hand. A fire, an actual combustion fire, which should not have been possible in a pressurized warship unless the fire suppression systems were either destroyed or deliberately disabled, bloomed orange and real through a wound in the midsection. It was accelerating toward 400 RT warships at a velocity that Sevrok's combat probability module assessed as non-survivable. His chromatophores, the deep bioluminescent cells that ran the length of his mantle, flickered to a pale, washed-out yellow. The color his species produced when a known category broke. He had watched RT conquest campaigns before. He was the Velfani Diplomatic Observation Bureau's senior attaché for exactly this kind of event, the formal, rational, well-documented end of a species' military capacity. It was not a comfortable posting, but it was an important one. The Velfani believed that extinction events required witnesses. Sevrok believed this also. He had witnessed 11 of them. None of them had looked like this. The other 11 human ships had died the way ships died, overwhelmed, outmaneuvered, their drive signatures going dark in quick, logical succession. The Arati fleet commander, Draveth, had not even come to the bridge for the opening engagement. This was standard. A species with 12 warships and a single orbital station facing 400 Arati dreadnoughts was not a military engagement. It was a formality. Draveth reviewed the parameters, delegated to his third tactical officer, and returned to his charts. The third tactical officer was currently requesting his presence on the bridge. Sevrok watched the Tenacity cross the halfway point between the human station and the Arati flagship. It had been hit 3 more times in the last 90 seconds. It was still accelerating. The fire through its midsection had spread, and the orange light of it backlit the ship's silhouette against the black in a way that should not have been beautiful and was. The open channel indicator lit. Sevrok had his translation matrix running before Draveth reached the command dais. He always ran it. He was paid to witness. The voice that came through was a woman's, in standard Galactic with an accent his matrix flagged as regional Earth, possibly the southwestern continental landmass, and she sounded the way someone sounds when they are reading a repair manifest, focused, unhurried, entirely oriented on the task. Arati flagship, this is Commander Vasquez of the ESS Tenacity. I am requesting immediate ceasefire and the opening of diplomatic communication. I am also requesting recovery access for the wreckage of the following vessels. She listed 11 ships. Sevrok's translation matrix noted she gave each one a full name, a registration number, and a hull designation. She read them the way someone reads a list of things they intend to collect. Draveth, who had arrived on the bridge mid-list, whose face carried the particular stillness of a very old, very competent being confronted with something genuinely new, said nothing until she finished. You are requesting, he said, the return of ships we destroyed. That's correct. They are debris. They're ours. There was a pause. Sevrok found his attention splitting between the conversation and a small scratch on the viewport glass, perhaps 7 millimeters in length, origin unknown. He began estimating it in Velfani pressure units. He was aware this was not useful. He continued anyway. Commander Vasquez, Draveth said, and his voice carried the careful, patient quality he used with species he was about to explain mathematics to. Your fleet has been eliminated. Your station will fall within the hour. Earth's industrial capacity, population, and military production have been assessed. Resistance is not a survivable option. The rational course. I heard you, she said. I'm not talking about surviving. I'm talking about terms. You have no leverage. I have a ship aimed at your flagship at 12,000 kilometers per second, so. A pause. That's some leverage. The third tactical officer pulled up the intercept projections. They were not good. The tenacity had been aimed with care, and, while point defense fire could destroy it, the debris field at current velocity would cause significant damage to two adjacent dreadnoughts and, at specific probability, 19% chance of critical damage to the flagship's forward weapons array. 19% was not high. It was also not zero. And, the Arete Dominion had never, in 7,000 cycles of expansion, lost a flagship to a species it was in the process of conquering. Sevrok measured the scratch on the viewport glass. 7.5 pressure units. Maybe 8. Draveth said, carefully, you would die. Yes, Commander Vasquez said, and the translation matrix stripped her voice of inflection but not of content, and the content was, obviously, and so what? You broke 11 of ours. We're going to need those back. Draveth ordered a full stop. Not victory protocol. Not conquest completion sequence. He queried his command index, found the relevant entry, and activated a protocol Sevrok had never seen used in 11 campaigns: engagement pause reason, adversary behavior unclassified. His fleet held position. 400 warships. One burning human vessel still approaching, engines now cut, drifting on the momentum of a decision already made. Sevrok looked at the scratch on the viewport for a long time. Then, he opened a new entry in his observation log and wrote, "This species does not appear to calculate survivable odds. They appear to calculate acceptable losses on the opposing side. I do not yet know if this is the same thing." He did not know if it was the same thing for 3 more days. They brought her aboard, and she asked where the food was. This was not the opening Sevrok had been prepared for. He had attended 14 prisoner intake procedures in his career. He had observed species who wept, who threatened, who invoked interstellar law, who went silent and turned inward in the way that social species do when their group has been removed from them. He had a protocol matrix for most of these. He did not have a protocol matrix for a prisoner who looked at the Arete intake chamber, its bare walls, its processing alcoves, its absolute clinical efficiency, and said, "Is there food here, or is this a whole thing I need to manage?" The Arete processing officer looked at Sevrok. Sevrok looked at his translation matrix to confirm he had rendered the statement correctly. He had. "The prisoner requires nutrition," the officer said. "The prisoner," Vasquez said, having apparently followed this exchange without a matrix of her own, which meant she spoke either Arete standard or, more likely, read Arete body language with sufficient fluency to track a conversation, "has been awake for 31 hours and hasn't eaten since before the battle. So yes. The prisoner requires nutrition." She was shorter than Sevrok had expected. He had reviewed human biology in preparation for this posting, their scale, their strength, the death world statistics that made most Arete analysts uncomfortable, and had assembled a mental image of something massive and deliberate, a creature built for endurance in the way that all persistence predator species were. Vasquez was built for endurance. But she was built compactly, efficiently, in a way that made her easy to underestimate right up until the moment you noticed her hands, which were the hands of someone who had repaired things under pressure for a long time, and her eyes, which had the quality of flat water over something very deep. She had been given clean clothes and basic medical treatment. The treatment had addressed a cut above her left eye, a burn along her forearm, and 2 fractured fingers that she had splinted herself at some point before boarding, using what Sevrok's medical assessment identified as standard wire and a piece of her own uniform. She had, apparently, done this during the battle. She had apparently done this and, then, continued running the battle. Sevrok was assigned as her observer and translator for the duration of what Draveth was calling a diplomatic hold, which was not a category the Dominion had used before and which had been created specifically because Draveth did not have a better word. He showed her to the quarters that had been assigned. She inspected them the way he suspected she inspected everything, methodically, without comment, noting the exits and the viewport and the position of the environmental controls. "You have 2 sensory organs I can't identify," she said, not looking at him. She was looking at the viewport, at the starfield, at the distant glow of what had been Kareth Station before the first engagement. "I have chemoreceptors," he said. "I taste the air. I can identify chemical compositions, emotional states, biological markers." She turned then, and looked at him directly. most species, when they learned about the chemoreception, became self-conscious. They were aware, suddenly, that they were broadcasting information they had not chosen to share. Vasquez looked mildly interested. "What do I taste like right now?" He answered honestly, because he could not imagine why he would not. "Cortisol, which is your stress response chemical. Adrenaline metabolites. Iron, from your injury. Something I cannot identify. Your species has several unique biochemical signatures my matrix doesn't have reference data for. The unique signature is probably the green salsa I had 6 hours ago," she said. "We can eat capsaicin. It's a neurotoxin in most species. I am aware. I watched you request it from the food synthesizer. The neurotoxin warning was a nice touch." She almost smiled. "I ignored it. I know. I watched you ignore it." She ate. He observed. The food synthesizer produced something adjacent to protein-dense human cuisine. He had given it her basic biological parameters and it had extrapolated, and she ate it without ceremony, without particular enjoyment, with the focused efficiency of a person refueling rather than dining. Then, she sat back and said, "Tell me about the Arity." "I'm sorry?" "The Dominion. Their history. How they fight, how they think, what they care about. How long they've been at this." She gestured at the ship around them, at the empire it represented. "I'm going to be here a while. I'd like to understand who I'm talking to." Savraka's chromatophores shifted. He could feel the shift, a slow, involuntary blue-green, and could not stop it. "Most prisoners," he said, "do not ask about their captors. I'm not a prisoner. I negotiated myself aboard." This was technically accurate. The ceasefire terms Vasquez had proposed, and which Draveth had accepted because he did not yet have a framework for refusing them, specified that she would come aboard voluntarily, that the Tenacity's remaining crew would be maintained in holding, and that no further military action would be taken against Earth's surface pending diplomatic resolution. She had given up the ship in exchange for time. Sevrak had been present when Draveth's advisors explained to him that she had no real leverage and that the negotiation had not materially changed the Dominion's position. Draveth had said nothing. He had looked at the analysis for a long time. Sevrak told her about the Arity. Their history, their expansion, the 7,000 cycles of rational, efficient, irresistible advance. The way they had never lost because they had never needed to. The way their war mathematics were so good and so old and so thoroughly tested that most species, when the Dominion arrived at their borders, had the calculations done before the first shot was fired. She listened. She did not take notes, which meant she was memorizing, and she memorized the way she ate, completely, efficiently, wasting nothing. "Do they have children?" she asked. His chromatophores did the thing he could not control. The thing he would not record. The food synthesizer's neurotoxin warning light was still blinking. He watched it for a moment. Then, he answered her. She sat with that for a while. Then, in the particular tone of someone who has assessed information and found it useful, she said, "Thank you." Sevrak filed his first report to the Velfani Observation Bureau that night cycle. He wrote it carefully. He reviewed it twice. He deleted 4 sentences. He was not certain what the 4 sentences were trying to say, and he had a professional obligation not to include analysis he could not support. The part about the chromatophores, he was particularly not certain about. He left it out. She found the memorial wall on her 3rd day aboard. Sevrak was not with her when she found it. He was in the corridor outside, reviewing his overnight observation files, and he rounded the corner and she was already there, standing in the dim that the Arity preferred for secondary corridors, looking up. The wall was floor to ceiling. 40 meters, maybe. Every species the Dominion had brought into the fold, the diplomatic word, had an engraving, name, contact date, the duration of military resistance, the final terms. 7,000 cycles of it. A rational record, well-maintained, factually accurate. Near the bottom, fresh, still sharp-edged where the older engravings had softened over time, 11 human ship designations. Their registration numbers. The date of their destruction. Vasquez stood in front of them for a long time. He watched her hands. She touched the engravings one at a time, passing her fingers over the letters in a way that was not. He searched his xenobehavioral matrix. He had no category for what it was. It was not grief performance, which he had seen. It was not mourning ritual, which he had documentation for in 14 species. It was more like verification. Like she was confirming something she already knew and needed to know with her hands as well as her eyes. She said, to the wall, "We're going to want those plaques back too." He did not respond. He did not think the statement was for him. Draveth arrived 20 minutes later, because he had been told she had found the wall, and because Sevrok suspected Draveth had learned already that this human was worth watching in person. He came with his formal engagement staff, 2 advisors, a translator who was redundant, given Sevrok, but whose presence was procedurally required, and a surrender document on a physical data tablet, which was the Dominion's way of communicating permanence. He laid out the mathematics patiently. Earth's population, its industrial base, its remaining military capacity, its position relative to the nearest allied species who were not, in fact, allied in any military sense. The calculation was not complicated. It was the same calculation that had worked for 7,000 cycles. The rational course, Draveth said, is acceptance of terms. We are not a cruel power. Species that enter the Dominion are preserved. Your culture, your language, your genetic integrity, these are maintained. You would lose sovereignty. You would not lose yourselves. Vasquez had turned from the wall during the briefing. She listened with the flat, attentive stillness of a person who had been in briefings many times and understood that the best time to respond was after the briefing, not during it. When Draveth finished, she said, "How long did it take you to build that math?" Draveth said, "The foundational models were developed approximately 7,000 cycles ago and have been refined continuously 40 years, she said. It took us about 40 years to figure out you were coming. We're still updating the math. It's not done yet." The engraving tool was mounted beside the wall, in its bracket, waiting for the next entry. Sevrok found himself looking at it. He was not sure when he had started. Draveth said, carefully, "The mathematics are not in question. The variables are not in dispute. The outcome, 7,000 cycles," she said. She wasn't arguing. She was thinking aloud, in the tone of someone confirming a calculation. Undefeated. That's impressive. She looked at the wall, then, at Draveth. Must make the first one really something. She left the meeting. Sevrok stayed because his role required it. He watched Draveth stand in front of the wall for a moment, looking at the place where Vasquez had stood, and then turn to his advisors and begin speaking in rapid Arathi command register. An emergency council. He had never called one before. In 7,000 cycles, there had never been a need. The engraving tool was in its bracket. Its charge light was green. Sevrok looked at it for a while. Then, he walked out. His chromatophores, the whole length of his mantle, had gone the deep blue-green of open water. He catalogued this and did not try to explain it, and walked back through the corridor toward the quarters where, he suspected, Commander Vasquez was already doing something he hadn't anticipated. Earth had been burning for 6 days when the Second Fleet arrived. Not their fleet. The Arathi's occupation force. 40,000 personnel, 600 armored units, prefabricated command infrastructure built for rapid deployment and designed to hold a Class 8 world. Class 8. That was what the Arathi Biological Survey had categorized Earth. Class 8 out of 10 on the habitability scale. A reasonable environment. Some challenges. Manageable. The survey had been conducted from orbit. Sevrok read the first field report while Vasquez was eating breakfast across the small observation room where they had developed the habit of meeting in the mornings, because she asked him questions and he had run out of reasons not to answer them. The report came to his personal observation feed because he had access credentials and, because the Arathi did not, in 7,000 cycles, had ever had reason to restrict field reports from a diplomatic observer. Occupation Zone 4, bacterial contamination of 4 atmospheric filtration suits, leading to evacuation of one forward operating base. Unknown vector. Zone Force Commander requested replacement filtration units and updated biological clearance protocols. Occupation Zone 7, Patrol Unit missing. Last known position, a temperate zone forest, classification, medium biomass, no significant predators noted by survey. Zone 7's commander requested search support. Occupation Zone 2, the armored column. He read the Zone 2 report twice. Then, he set down his nutrient supplement and read it again. 30 humans. Pre-technological projectile weapons and what the Arity Field Team's analysis identified as improvised explosive devices manufactured from agricultural fertilizer and fuel compounds available in any farming settlement. The armored column had been 12 units. 7 had been disabled. 3 had been destroyed. The remaining 2 had retreated to the Zone 2 perimeter. The humans had taken 3 casualties. Vasquez looked up from her food. She had been watching his chromatophores, which had apparently been doing something worth watching. "Bad morning," she said. He turned his feed so she could see it. She read. Her expression did not change. This was, he had come to understand, not the absence of reaction. It was the presence of recognition. She was reading news she had already expected to receive. "Yeah," she said. She set down her utensil. "We've been practicing." "Practicing," he said. "For about 200,000 years, give or take. We grew up on a death world. We didn't get soft in space." She picked her utensil back up. "We got angrier." More reports came in over the following 3 days. He stopped trying to read them without her. He was not certain when this had become the arrangement. It had become the arrangement. Zone 3, an entire supply depot Arathi constructed, Arathi secured, guarded by 40 troops, had been dismantled in a single night. Not blown up. Dismantled. Every usable component removed. Not one Arity soldier had seen or heard anything. Zone 9, civilians. A group classified in the initial survey as non-combatant agricultural workers had constructed an improvised communication network using pre-digital technology radios, physical wavelength transmission, devices that required no power grid and no detectable electronic signature. They had been coordinating resistance activity across 4 occupation zones before the Arity signals team identified the transmissions. When the signals team triangulated the source, they found a farmhouse. The farmhouse was empty. The equipment was gone. On the kitchen table was a handwritten note, which the translation team rendered as, "Thanks for the visit. Come back any time. Zone 11. The garrison of 200. Sevrok read that report very slowly. He read the garrison commander's supplemental note, which had been flagged by Arity command staff as anomalous, multiple times. Assessment of tactical situation, indefensible. Human combatants entered Zone 11 perimeter at 0300 hours, force estimated at 11 individuals. Standard deterrence response was initiated. Force did not withdraw. Standard escalated response was initiated. Force did not withdraw. Casualties were taken on both sides. Force did not withdraw. After 6 hours of engagement, this command post has determined that the human forces cannot be deterred by conventional means available to this garrison. We are prepared to continue. However, the garrison has lost the will to continue shooting at something that does not stop. We are requesting guidance. He read the word 11 and held it for a long time. 11 ships. 11 humans. He wrote the number in his log and stared at it. "Hey," Vasquez said. He looked up. "You're doing the thing where you go very still and your skin gets the dark color," she said. "Does that mean you're scared or does that mean something else?" "It means," he said carefully, "that I am revising a model." "What model?" "The model I use to understand what I am observing." He paused. "I have revised it 3 times this week. The previous version of the model served me for 11 campaigns. She looked at him the way she sometimes looked at the viewport, not at the thing beyond the glass, but at the glass itself. At the boundary. "What does the new model say?" she said. He did not answer immediately. He thought about the victory wall, and the engraving tool in its bracket, and the scratch on the viewport glass that he had measured and not recorded, and the chromatophore entry he had deleted from 11 separate observation logs. "I don't know yet," he said. Draveth ordered tactical withdrawal from 3 occupation zones that afternoon. Sevrok was in the command briefing. He watched Draveth give the order in the measured, efficient tone of a man doing something he had done 10,000 times, and Sevrok watched the one thing he had never seen in Draveth's face before, the moment before the order, when the man who had never needed to hesitate looked at his own hands. Just for a moment. Then, he gave the order, and he was Draveth again, and the Empire moved. But Sevrok had seen it. The second human fleet was not made of ships. Sevrok was at the viewport when it began, because he was always at the viewport now, in the way that a being goes to the place where the incomprehensible things arrive and waits, and what arrived was a frequency. Every channel. Every band. Every communications protocol the Dominion used, and several they did not use but which human signals intelligence had apparently mapped, because the humans had been listening for a long time. A broadcast, simultaneous, from every human-held position in every occupied zone, from 2 ships that had apparently been hiding in the debris field of the battle for 11 days, from the Tenacity itself, sitting dark in its holding dock. A woman's voice. Not Vasquez. Someone else. And then, other voices. And then, more. Dozens. Hundreds. A relay, one voice picking up where the last ended, in a language pattern he recognized as formal memorial register from his xenolinguistic files. They were reading names. The 11 ships, each crew member, each officer, each technical rating, read in full. Then, the dead from Kareth Station. Then, zone by zone, the names of everyone who had died in 6 days of occupation, military and civilian both. Children. The elderly. A name repeated 3 times in Zone 6 that his matrix flagged as a family unit, because the surname was identical. Not threats. Not demands. Not tactical communication. Names. Vasquez appeared beside him. He did not know when she had come to the viewport. He was aware, suddenly, that she had been there for some time. "What is this?" he said. It was not quite a question. "We don't let people disappear," she said. "We can't always save them. We can't always win. But, we can say their names. We can make sure they happened." She paused. "It's the only thing we can do that costs nothing and that you can't take back from us. You can burn our ships. You can occupy our cities. You can't make us stop saying their names." His chemoreception was registering something he could not classify. A compound emotional state with no designation in his biochemical matrix. He was generating a stress response for a threat he could not locate the source of. He watched the broadcast. The names kept coming. "How long?" he said. "Until they're all said." She glanced at him. Her hands were loose at her sides, which meant she was not bracing for physical danger. This was not a braced moment. This was something else. A few hours, probably. A few hours. Every channel. Every name. Draveth opened a channel to Vasquez directly. No protocol. No command staff in the room. Sevrok could see the readout. It was a personal register transmission, the kind used for conversations that were not for the record. Draveth said, "How do you keep going?" Not a tactical question. Not a strategic question. 7,000 cycles of expansion, and this was the question the Dominion had arrived at, not how do you win, not what do you want, but how. "When the math says stop," he said. "How?" Vasquez said, "The math is about what you're willing to lose. We're not willing. So the math doesn't apply." The channel held open. The names kept coming through every other frequency. Draveth closed the channel. The withdrawal began 3 days later. Not a defeat. Not officially. The Dominion did not have a word for this particular outcome, because the outcome required a category the Dominion had not built. Their war mathematics were complete and tested and had served for 7,000 cycles, and somewhere in those mathematics there was no variable for a species that refused to be a number. Sevrok watched the fleet pull back from his place aboard a Velfani diplomatic transport, having requested immediate extraction on grounds of observation mission completion, which was technically accurate and not entirely honest. He stood at the viewport, a different viewport now, a Velfani viewport, without the scratch, and watched 400 Arati dreadnoughts rearrange themselves in the geometry of departure. He opened his observation log. His final entry. He wrote it in Velfani Formal Memorial Register, which was not the standard format for observation reports. The standard format required analysis, assessment, tactical summary, and projection. The Formal Memorial Register was used for things that must not be forgotten. He wrote, "There is a word in Velfani, Soreth Khan, the rational grief of accepting a correct loss. A feeling of sadness that does not impede function because the loss was the mathematically sound outcome and its acceptance is the mark of an evolved mind. Every species I have studied has an equivalent. The Arati have 3. I have observed Soreth Khan in 14 separate species across 11 campaigns. It is the most common advanced cognition emotional state I know of, because loss is common and rationality is the only tool available to a species that wishes to survive it. The humans do not have this word. I checked. I checked again when I first noticed the absence, 18 days ago. I checked again today. I have spent 18 days constructing possible explanations. That the concept exists in their language under a term my matrix has not indexed. That they process the experience through a different linguistic framework. That their word for it exists and I have not found it. I have not found it. I am no longer looking. The Velfani High Council will receive this report and will note that the Arati Dominion has withdrawn from the Sol system without formal conquest completion. They will ask for my analysis of why. I will give them this. 7,000 cycles ago, the Dominion built a mathematics of war. It was correct. It has worked every time. It does not work on this species because this species does not engage with the variable the mathematics is built on, which is the willingness to accept that some things cannot be recovered. The humans do not accept this. I do not mean they dispute it. I mean they have looked at the proof, understood it, and chosen not to be governed by it. They do not calculate what cannot be recovered. They commit to recovery as a philosophical position and allow the universe to object. The universe has, so far, not been able to object fast enough. I have one additional observation, which I include because the Formal Memorial Register requires complete honesty. 18 days ago, a human commander read me a list of names and asked me to listen. I did not know why I listened. I know now. It is because, at some point in the preceding 17 days, I had begun to understand that the names were the point. Not the ships. Not the battles. Not the mathematics. The names. A species that will not let its dead be abstract cannot be defeated by a species that has never learned to say their names. I am recommending this report become required reading at every Velfani Diplomatic Academy. I am recommending its title be, On the Species That Does Not Calculate. I am also recommending that whoever reads it take their time. These people are worth it. He closed the log. Outside the viewport, the Arati fleet was gone. In its place, a starfield, and the distant blue-white point of Sol, and somewhere near it a burned and battered ship called the Tenacity that was already, his signals monitor told him, receiving inbound supply vessels from 3 directions, carrying parts, carrying crew, carrying the components of reconstruction. She would fly again. He had not expected to find this surprising. He found it surprising anyway, in the way you find a thing surprising when you have known it was coming and still aren't ready. He closed the viewport shade. He picked up the report. He carried it, in the formal memorial sense, the only way a thing like this can be carried forward into a galaxy that was not the same as it had been 18 days ago, and would never be again. The cold black of deep space filled with the wreckage of 11 human warships, debris fields glinting in starlight, hull plating and drive cores scattered across the void, a distant blue-white star providing faint backlighting. In the foreground, a single surviving vessel, the ESS Tenacity, trails fire from a gaping wound in its midsection, its hull scorched and breached, port side open to vacuum. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The ESS Tenacity from close range, combustion fire blooming orange and reel through a torn midsection wound, drive signature burning unevenly in double exhaust asymmetry, the ship's hull plating buckled and scored by multiple direct hits. The vessel is visibly damaged but accelerating, aimed toward a massive enemy fleet barely visible in the far distance. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. 400 Arete dreadnoughts in tight formation, enormous wedge-shaped warships with angular black hull plating, pale blue running lights in geometric rows, their scale dwarfing anything near them. The fleet is stationary, weapons arrays visible but not active, facing the single burning human vessel approaching from the opposite side of the frame. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Interior of an Arete flagship bridge, clean, minimalist, all sharp angles and cold white light, holographic tactical displays showing the battle in abstract geometric notation. An alien observer, Sevrok, stands at the viewport, a cephalopod-adjacent being with a broad mantle bearing faintly luminescent chromatophore cells currently flickering pale washed-out yellow, for slim secondary manipulators pressed against the glass. His compound eyes are fixed on the approaching human vessel. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Sevrok at the viewport, his chromatophore pattern mantle pale and unsettled, one manipulator arm raised. The scratched viewport glass reflects both his alien features and the fire of the approaching Tenacity outside. The bridge behind him is staffed by Arete officers, tall, angular beings with smooth gray-blue carapace skin and secondary eyelids, moving with unhurried efficiency. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The ESS Tenacity fills the viewport completely now, close enough to see individual hull plates, the combustion fire casting orange light across the bridge interior. Sevrok stands very still. His chromatophores have gone pale. A small scratch on the viewport glass catches the light, 7 mm long, catching orange from the approaching fire. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Draveth, the Arete fleet commander, arrives on the bridge, a tall, severe being with smooth gray-blue carapace, secondary eyelids half-lowered in the Arete expression of focused assessment. He wears a commander's rank markings in cold silver along his shoulder plates. He is looking at the holographic tactical display, which shows the Tenacity's velocity vector aimed directly at the flagship. His advisors stand behind him. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close-up on a holographic tactical display showing the Tenacity's intercept trajectory in red, the flagship's position in pale blue, the probability cone of debris damage in amber. The numbers update in real time. A hand, the gray-blue angular hand of an Arete officer, hovers near the display without touching it. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The open-channel communications board on the Arete bridge lights up, a single incoming signal from the Tenacity, rendered in human script on one holographic panel. Sevrok stands at a translation station, his chemoreceptor tendrils slightly extended, his chromatophores unsteady. The bridge has gone quieter. Arete officers have turned from their stations. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Commander Vasquez on the Tenacity's firelit bridge, a compact Latina woman in a scarred EVA suit, a cut above her left eye sealed with medical adhesive, her right forearm bearing a fresh burn. She stands at a communications console, expression calm and focused, speaking into the transmission pickup. The bridge around her is on fire in two places. Emergency lighting casts everything in red-orange. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez's hands on the communications console, her left hand bearing two splinted fingers wrapped in wire and torn uniform fabric as she reads from a list visible on a small personal display. The list is a column of ship names. Her expression is the expression of someone reading a repair manifest, not a eulogy. The fire behind her reflects in the console screen. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Draveth on the Arete bridge, facing the communications panel, his secondary eyelids fully open, the Arity equivalent of genuine attention. He holds a formal data tablet bearing the surrender protocol sequence, its charge light green, and used. His advisors behind him are exchanging glances. Sevrok watches from his translation station. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Arity fleet in full stop, 400 dreadnoughts stationary against the void, running lights holding steady, weapons arrays returning to standby configuration. The single-burned human vessel drifts toward them, engines now cut, momentum carrying it forward on a long coast. The space between them is vast and very still. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Sevrok at his observation station, one manipulator holding a stylus over his log interface, the other pressed flat against the console surface. His chromatophores are flickering in irregular patterns, pale yellow shot through with uncertain blue-green. On his log screen, a single unfinished sentence is visible. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Arity intake chamber, bare walls, processing alcoves, sterile white light, designed for efficiency. Commander Vasquez stands in the center of it, still in her scarred EVA suit, looking around with the methodical assessment of someone cataloging exits and vulnerabilities. An Arity processing officer stands at the intake station, posture uncertain. Sevrok stands to one side, translation interface active. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close-up of the Arity food synthesizer panel, its display showing a nutrition synthesis sequence alongside a blinking amber warning light labeled with the alien script equivalent of neurotoxin alert. The panel is functional but clearly not designed with human dietary parameters in mind. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez eating at the food synthesizer's output tray, expression focused and functional rather than enjoying the food. She is eating something the synthesizer generated in alien geometric portion shapes. The neurotoxin warning light blinks behind her. Sevrok stands nearby, his chemoreceptor tendrils slightly extended, observing. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez's quarters on the Arity flagship, sparse, Arity minimalist, everything angular and efficient, a viewport showing the starfield. Vasquez stands at the viewport, not looking at the stars but at the distant glow of what was Kareth Station, now a debris field. Her posture is still, contained, not grief performance but something quieter. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Sevrok in conversation with Vasquez in her quarters, the cephalopod-adjacent alien with his chromatophore mantle displaying an involuntary blue-green, his four secondary manipulators in a neutral attentive position. Vasquez sits across from him, elbows on her knees, watching his skin change color with mild, genuine interest rather than discomfort. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close-up of Sevrok's mantle, the chromatophore cells visible as individual points of bioluminescent color, currently shifting from pale yellow to an unexpected, involuntary blue-green. The shift is visible as a wave moving from his forward edge backward, uncontrolled, like something surfacing. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez leaning forward in her chair, looking at Sevrok with the same focused attention she gives everything. The food synthesizer's amber warning light is still blinking in the background, the only moving thing in the frame except Sevrok's chromatophores. She is not uncomfortable. She is paying attention. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Sevrok at his observer station, late cycle, the bridge lights dimmed to night running level. He is writing his report on a holographic interface. Several lines of text are visible, then, a gap where lines have been deleted. His manipulators rest on the edge of the interface. His chromatophores are subdued, uneven. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The memorial corridor on the Arity flagship, 40 meters of engraved species names, floor to ceiling, the carvings older toward the top and freshest near the bottom. The lighting is dim, secondary corridor blue. The engravings are in Arity script, precise and uniform. Near the bottom, 11 new entries, sharp-edged and recent. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez alone in the memorial corridor, standing in front of the 11 newest engravings. The corridor is otherwise empty. She is close to the wall, one hand raised, fingertips touching the carved letters. Her head is slightly bowed. Not weeping. Present. The blue corridor light falls across the side of her face. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close-up of Vasquez's hands on the engraved ship names, her left hand with its two splinted fingers, her right with its burn scar. The carved letters under her fingertips are crisp and new. Her hands are still. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The engraving tool in its mounting bracket beside the memorial wall, a precision industrial instrument, sleek and functional, its charge light green. It has not been used recently. The wall beside it holds 40 meters of completed work. The tool waits. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Draveth and his staff arriving in the memorial corridor, the fleet commander leading, formal and correct, carrying a physical data tablet. Behind him, 2 advisors and a translator. The corridor is narrow enough that their arrival changes the quality of the space. Vasquez has turned from the wall to face them, her back to the newest engravings. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Draveth presenting the surrender document to Vasquez, the data tablet extended, charge light green, his posture formal and patient. His face carries the particular stillness of an authority that has done this 10,000 times and expects a specific response. Vasquez stands with her hands loose at her sides, listening. Sevrok stands at the corridor edge, observing. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez and Draveth in profile facing each other in the memorial corridor, the wall of engraved species names stretching behind both of them. Their sizes contrast, Draveth taller, angular, Arathi severe. Vasquez compact and still. Between them, the data tablet on a small formal stand, unchosen, its charge light still green. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close-up of Draveth's face as Vasquez delivers her final line, his secondary eyelids slowly widening, the Arathi indicator of involuntary attention. The expression is not offense. It is something the Arathi face apparently has no practiced configuration for. Sevrok, behind him, watches this happen. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The memorial corridor after Vasquez has left Draveth and his advisors remaining. Draveth stands facing the wall of engravings, not looking at his advisors. The engraving tool is in its bracket to his right. The newest entries are at eye level. He is very still. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Sevrok leaving the memorial corridor, his back to us, walking toward the far end of the dim passage. His chromatophore mantle is visible in the corridor blue, the full length of it, deep blue-green, involuntary and uncontrolled. He does not look back. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Aerial view of Earth from orbit, a curved horizon showing active storm systems over the Pacific, the thin blue line of the atmosphere, city lights visible on the night side. In the mid-distance, Arathi occupation vessels in low-orbit holding pattern, their angular silhouettes contrasting with the planet's organic curves. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Arathi occupation troops in deployment formation on Earth's surface, tall gray-blue carapaced soldiers in angular full-suit armor, moving through a temperate zone landscape. The vegetation around them is Earth normal and slightly wrong in scale for beings used to different biology. Their suits show early signs of contamination alerts, amber lights on several forearm panels. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. An Arathi forward operating base, prefabricated angular structures, efficient and temporary, placed in a cleared area. Several of the atmospheric filtration units on the base perimeter show orange malfunction indicators. A squad of Arathi soldiers stands near the filtration bank, posture uncertain, awaiting protocol guidance that has not yet come. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A temperate Earth forest from above, dense canopy, no visible structures, no visible movement. An Arity patrol route marked in holographic blue overlays the tree line. The patrol's last registered position is marked with a yellow uncertainty indicator. No contacts. No signatures. The forest is simply still. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A rural Earth road, dawn light, debris from an Arity armored column, 7 of 12 vehicles disabled or destroyed, 1 overturned, smoke rising from 2 in the distance. The vehicles are large, sophisticated, Arity manufactured. The damage to them was done with improvised tools. There are no large craters, no energy weapon scoring. The damage is precise and mechanical. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close-up of improvised explosive damage to an Arity armored vehicle, the structural failure point consistent with low-technology agricultural compound explosive. The Arity vehicle's sophisticated armor plating has been breached at an angle that indicates intimate knowledge of its weak points. The breach is not large. It was enough. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. An Arity field analyst examining the damage to the armored vehicle, running a scan with a handheld instrument. The scan results on his wrist display show material composition analysis, agricultural fertilizer compounds, fuel derivatives, common Earth available components. His posture carries the particular stillness of a being whose analysis has returned a result it was not calibrated to expect. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Savrak and Vasquez in the observation room, morning cycle. A small table between them. Vasquez eating from a synthesizer tray. Savrak holding a field report on a holographic tablet, his chromatophore shifting with the dark blue of deep processing. Vasquez is watching his skin. The neurotoxin warning light is still blinking in the background. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close-up of the field report on Savrak's tablet, text in Arity script with translation running alongside. The Zone 2 report. The armored column data. Casualty figures, 3 human, 7 Arity armored units disabled, 3 destroyed. Savrak's manipulator rests beside the tablet without touching it. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez reading the field report, the screen reflected in her eyes, which are showing no surprise at all. Her expression is the expression of someone receiving confirmation of something they already knew. She sets down her utensil. Her hands are still on the table. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A Zone 3 supply depot, or what remains of it. A cleared area, Arity built foundations, the ghosts of prefabricated structures. Every movable component is gone. The depot has been dismantled rather than destroyed, systematically, leaving nothing functional. Dawn light over an empty field. A single Arity soldier stands at the perimeter, looking at nothing. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Interior of a rural Earth farmhouse, simple construction, functional furniture, the warm morning light of an agricultural region. On the kitchen table, a handwritten note on torn paper, surrounded by the ghost marks where equipment once rested, dust outlines of radio components, wire spools, transmission gear, all removed. The room is empty and sunlit. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Arity signals intelligence team and a mobile unit, holographic displays showing radio frequency analysis, wavelength maps, triangulation data. The team leader, a senior Arity analyst with rank markings along his shoulder plates, is looking at a display that shows the triangulated signal source resolved to a single farmhouse icon. His secondary eyelids are open fully. The farmhouse icon is flagged, location cleared, NO personnel found. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. An Arity garrison of 200 troops in a Zone 11 compound, full combat deployment. Perimeter defenses active, defensive positions manned. The compound is well built and well defended. 11 humans are visible in the distance at the tree line, moving steadily toward the perimeter. The gap between the garrison and the approaching humans is wide. The perimeter lights illuminate the empty ground between them. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Zone 11 engagement at Hour 3, the Arity perimeter defense is showing impact marks, the humans closer now, still advancing. Arity troops at the defensive positions firing, their weapons making contact. The humans take cover, move, advance again. The mathematics of the engagement do not add up. The garrison is larger, better equipped, better positioned. The humans are still coming. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A single Arity soldier at a Zone 11 defensive position, his weapon lowered, his posture carrying something that in most species would be identified as exhaustion, but which the Arity frame of reference has no word for in this context. He is looking at the approaching humans. The weapon is down. He is still looking. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Sevrok at his observation desk, his log interface open. On the screen, the number 11, written and rewritten in his own script. 11 ships. 11 humans. The number sits in the center of an otherwise empty log entry. His chromatophores are the deep, flat indigo of a being processing something it does not have a category for. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Drabeth in the command briefing room, alone, his advisors standing at the perimeter of the room, silent. He is at the central display, looking at the zone mapping. 3 zones are highlighted in amber, the withdrawal recommendation zones. His hands rest on the display edge. The pause before the order. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close-up of Draveth's hands on the display edge, gray-blue carapace, angular, precise, still. The tactical display beneath them shows the 3 withdrawal zones. The 7,000 cycle commander's hands, holding completely still, in the moment before they give the first withdrawal order of his career. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The 3 occupation zones in tactical display, their zone markers shifting from active operations blue to withdrawal amber, one by one. The display updates in real time. Arity troop position icons begin to move. Sevrok watches from his station at the back of the briefing room. His expression, insofar as a cephalopod being has readable expression, is directed at the display. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Wide shot of the Arity flagship bridge, night cycle running lights, most stations reduced to monitoring. Sevrok alone at the viewport, his back to the bridge. The viewport shows stars and the distant pale dot of Sol. His chromatophore mantle is dark and very still. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The communications board on the Arity flagship bridge, every band and channel simultaneously active, all showing incoming signal from multiple human-held positions. The display of active channels is more channels than the board has ever shown simultaneously. A communications officer stands at the board with both hands raised, not touching it, staring at the display. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Inside the Tenacity's holding dock, the burned ship stationary in its berth, still carrying the scars of the battle. A small indicator light on its hull is active, transmission array, running. The ship is dark and damaged and broadcasting. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Sevrok at the viewport as the broadcast begins, his chemoreceptor tendrils extended, reading the air, as the sound of names begins to come through every communications channel simultaneously. The viewport reflects his face and his chromatophores, all the colors at once, uncontrolled, cycling. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The ESS Tenacity's transmission array close-up, a human-built communications installation, functional and scarred, broadcasting outward into the void. The signal lines on the technical readout show full-power transmission across a wideband spread. Every frequency. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A communications relay somewhere in occupied Earth, a woman's hands at a transmitter board, beginning to read names. The room is a basement, improvised, low-light, the equipment jury-rigged from available components. Her face is composed and focused. The transmission light is green. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Another relay station, different location, a man reading from a handwritten list. The list is long. He reads at measured pace, one name at a time. Behind him, other people are listening. Some of them are very still. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A third relay, an elderly woman reading a family name 3 times. The transmission room is a kitchen. The transmitter is on the table next to an empty cup. She reads all 3 iterations of the name at the same pace, then continues to the next entry. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. RT officers on the flagship bridge, multiple stations, all of them having turned from their work to face the communications array as names come in on every channel. Their secondary eyelids are open. No one has given an order to acknowledge or respond. The names are simply present on every frequency, impossible to not hear. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez appearing beside Sevrock at the viewport, they stand together without speaking, both facing the stars, the audio from the broadcast present in the background. Her hands are loose at her sides. His chromatophores are all the colors at once. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez in 3/4 profile, speaking quietly to Sevrock, her expression matter-of-fact, explaining something she has known for a long time. The viewport behind her shows the void and the broadcast source directions. Her voice is audible but the words are not yet visible in the frame. This is the moment before the most important sentence. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close-up of Sevrock's chemoreceptor tendrils extended fully, reading the complex emotional air of the bridge. His mantle is cycling through colors with no pattern. He is registering a compound emotional state his matrix has no classification for. The tendrils are very still at the tips, trembling slightly in the middle. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Draveth in a private communications alcove alone, his formal staff notably absent, a personal register transmission panel open in front of him. He has opened a channel to Vasquez. His posture, for the first time in the story, carries something other than command certainty. His secondary eyelids are closed. He is about to ask a question he has never asked before. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The personal register transmission panel showing an open channel, 2 indicators, one Arathi side, one human side, both active. Between them, the small visual of the signal, 2 points of light connected by a line. A conversation happening that is not for the record. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Vasquez receiving Draveth's transmission, she stands at the communications panel in her quarters, facing it, her expression attentive. This is not the question she was expecting, but it is the question she recognizes. She is still. She is going to answer it honestly. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Draveth receiving Vasquez's answer, his face in the alcove light, alone. His expression is not the expression of a man receiving new tactical data. It is the expression of a man receiving something he did not know he was missing. His secondary eyelids open slowly. He does not respond immediately. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Draveth closing the channel, his hand on the transmission panel, the connection indicator going dark. He is alone in the alcove. The broadcast is still audible through the ship's open channel feed, names still coming. He is sitting with something. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Arity flagship's command display showing the withdrawal order in progress, fleet icons repositioning, zone markers shifting to disengagement configuration. The withdrawal is measured and systematic, the way all Arity operations are. The order itself occupies the center of the display. The date stamp shows 3 days after the broadcast began. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Arity fleet in motion, dreadnoughts pivoting to departure headings, their running lights shifting from station keeping amber to transit blue. The geometry of their formation changing, opening up, beginning to move. The Sol system is visible in the background. Earth is visible, still present, still there. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. A Velfani diplomatic transport, smaller than the Arete vessels, more organic in design, slightly bioluminescent hull panels in the Velfani style, smooth curves where the Arete build angles. It sits in the transport bay of the Arete flagship, boarding ramp extended. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Sevrock at the Velfani transport's viewport, a different viewport now, smaller, set in a different kind of ship. He looks out. His chromatophore mantle is quiet now, a steady, deep, even blue-green. Not cycling. Settled. Whatever has been unsteady in him has resolved into a new configuration. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Arete fleet departing from Sevrock's viewport aboard the Velfani transport, watching the dreadnoughts move. 400 ships in withdrawal formation, their running lights blue transit, receding. The space they leave behind is empty and enormous. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Velfani transport's observation log interface, holographic, small, intimate. Sevrock's hands on the entry interface, his secondary manipulators holding a stylus, composing text. The log is in Velfani formal memorial script, not observation report format. The difference is visible in the script style even without translation. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Close-up of the memorial log entry being written Velfani script, formal and flowing, line by line. The word Sorethkon visible in the fourth line, standing alone. The entry is long. The words continue past the visible frame. The stylus moves steadily. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The viewport of the Velfani transport showing Sol, a small bright star, distant, the pale blue-white of a G-type star is seen from several light-hours out. The debris field of the original battle is not visible at this distance. The system looks quiet. The ESS Tenacity is somewhere near that star. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The ESS Tenacity from the outside burned and battered, holding dock still showing battle damage, hull breach on the port side sealed with emergency materials. 3 inbound supply vessels visible approaching from different vectors, carrying components and crew. The Tenacity's transmission array is still active. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Interior of the Tenacity, crew returning to stations, engineers in the damaged sections, repairs underway. People working. The fire damage visible in the overhead panels, the emergency sealant on the hull breach, the gap where equipment used to be. People working anyway. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Sevrock closing the viewport shade on his Velfani transport, his hand on the shade mechanism, the last light of Sol's direction going dark. His chromatophores are the steady even blue-green of settled purpose. He is carrying the report. He is going somewhere. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. The Velfani transport entering transit, its bioluminescent hull panels brightening as the drive engages, the ship beginning its departure from the Sol system. Behind it, the remaining stars of the system are visible. Ahead, the deep transit corridor. Sevrock is aboard, carrying the report. The galaxy is the same size it was before this mission. It is not the same galaxy. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting. Final image, a vast star field, one bright star slightly right of center, Sol. The ESS Tenacity in silhouette against the starfield, tiny but present, its transmission array indicators still glowing. Supply ships docked at its side. Not triumphant. Just working. Still there. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, dramatic lighting, deep space setting.